Hi, my name is Luke Powell, and you're listening to the What is Crypto podcast.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the What is Crypto podcast with your boy Nye. My name is Matthew Aaron, and I'm the producer. You know, there's a cryptocurrency out there that kind of does it all. They have proof of stake, proof of work, lightning, atomic swaps, governance. They have everything into one. Now, looking at this from the outside, me personally, a skeptic, would say, that sounds like a money grab. That sounds like some BS. That sounds like them just kind of doing everything that is a hot topic or a talking point to put into one cryptocurrency and let's see if people just, kind of fall into it. Or it could be the world's perfect crypto. So in this episode, we talked to Mr. Luke Powell, the senior developer for Decred, and ask him just that. Why do we need all that stuff in one cryptocurrency? And if we do need all that stuff in one cryptocurrency, well then why do we need all the other ones? Decred is already it. So I want to get to the bottom of this, and I'm excited to hear this conversation. But before we get into this conversation, please, wherever you're listening to this podcast, leave us a 5-star rating, make sure you're subscribed, and throw a comment up there. Write something out. Type away. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. We just want to see the comment up there. It's going to help us improve, and it's going to help people find the podcast. Also, just to let you know, we have a Patreon set up. If you want to donate to us, if you like the content, if you like what we're doing here, please throw us a couple bucks. It'll help us pay editors. It'll help us pay for hosting services, or just get us a cup of coffee so we can stay up late at night recording these episodes. Now, without further rambling, here's your boy Nye, Mr. Luke Powell, talking about creating the perfect crypto. We'll see you after the show.
Awesome, Luke. Glad to have you on the show today. Can you share your full name and title with me, please?
So my name is Luke Powell, and I'm a developer for Decred.
Awesome. And how would you describe yourself?
I would say I'm a builder, I'm a generalist, a capitalist, an optimist, and a person who learns through trial and error.
What is the difference between the proof of work and the proof of stake? Because this is a 101 podcast. We're trying to teach beginners here. What's the best definition you have for each?
Proof of work is essentially where you are expending some energy to create a block. This in Bitcoin, this is by its computational energy. So it is the cost of electricity plus the cost of your computer hardware to solve, what you can think of as cryptographic puzzles. Whereas proof of stake, you're not actually spending energy. What you're doing is you're locking up capital, and the people who lock up capital get to decide what gets added onto the blockchain. So there is the opportunity cost of that capital that you're locking up, but there's a lot of potential problems with proof of stake. Proof of stake is still largely unproven, whereas proof of work has been around, for 10 years with Bitcoin. It's what Bitcoin uses. It's what Bitcoin and Decred both rely on for the underlying security of the network. And you can think of it as really just the network being secured by that energy consumption of the miners.
And you guys have proof of work, proof of stake, all mixed into what you're building, as well as atomic swaps. And I like your governance model. It's something that I've been a fan of for a very long time, ever since Marco really introduced it to me. Break it down for me. Why do you need all of these different things?
Bitcoin started with proof of work. And proof of work has been proven to work so far. We're big fans of proof of work. Some of the arguments against it is that this energy consumption, is bad for the environment or things like that. But the way that I look at it is that this energy is not being wasted. It's going to secure basically a global store of value, right? And the net benefit of what that enables is far more than what the energy cost is. But the reason that Decred added proof of stake on top is to solve a couple problems with what they perceive to be in the Bitcoin ecosystem. So before they were Decred developers, the core guys that launched Decred were Bitcoin developers. They built BTC Suite, which is the Golang Bitcoin implementation. And during that process, they interacted with the other teams firsthand and the Bitcoin governance process firsthand, and really saw two very limiting aspects to it. It's how are project decisions made, and then how are those decisions paid for? In Bitcoin, in a decentralized project, right, ideally, you don't want any central points of failure. So when you're making project decisions, you come across this problem. Okay, how do we decide what gets added to the protocol? How do we make decisions as a project without introducing these central points of failure? And the way that Bitcoin has handled this is that they've decided just to go the route of not implementing any hard fork changes, meaning no changes that are not backwards compatible. All the changes being made to Bitcoin have to be backwards compatible so that you don't have to upgrade if you don't want to. So they essentially try and take that decision-making process completely out of the equation, because if that decision-making process existed, if they allowed hard forks, it would mean that there's some group or some entity that is making decisions about which hard forks and which changes are legitimate and which changes are not. And if that entity exists, it could potentially be co-opted to harm Bitcoin. So they took this no hard fork route. And that will work in the short term, but if you're talking about a time scale of decades or centuries, there are absolutely going to be technological changes that will force these protocols to make hard fork changes, to make non-backwards compatible network upgrades. One such example is, SHA-256 will break one day. And when that cryptography breaks, Bitcoin will have to hard fork away from it before it does. Now, if you don't already have a decision-making mechanism in place, then what you're going to end up getting is just a very complicated mess with no clear way to make a decision as a community and move forward. And we kind of saw this with the block size debate. If you're not familiar, it was about a 3-year-long debate about making a hard fork change in Bitcoin. And it caused a lot of commotion. It was a big distraction. It lasted for quite a while, but ultimately, the way that they moved forward was to come to this decision of not making any hard fork changes. But in the future, if Bitcoin does succeed, right, it's going to be orders of magnitude bigger. It's not going to be individual companies or individual people kind of fighting it out. It's going to be nation states who have very large vested interests. And if there's no way for a project to make a decision as in a decentralized way as a community, there's a big unknown of whether the project will be able to maintain coherency or fracture into a bunch of smaller competing projects. So this was one issue that Decred set out to solve. And the only way to really solve that is to allow the people who actually have skin in the game, who are taking the risk, which is the actual coin holders, to dictate what decisions get made, right? If you have any other system in place, then what you're doing is you're allowing other people who are not subject to the risk making decisions about risk. So by allowing the actual coin holders to make the decisions, the coin holders are the ones that will be subjected to the risk, the price volatility that results from the decisions. And so they should be the ones that have the final say. Now, the second thing that kind of Decred set out to solve, and the second reason for this proof of stake aspect, is the funding issue, right? Multiple projects have had this issue of how do we pay for the developers for these protocols, right? These projects are not profit-driven enterprises. They gain value by basically getting adoption, attracting people to the project. But you have this issue of how do you pay for the continued development of the project? So in Bitcoin, a couple teams are funded by VC money, right? But the problem with that is that the VCs have to earn a return on that investment. And the interest of the VCs is not necessarily going to align with the interest of the actual coin holders. So you have this fundamental misaligned interest that can lead to potentially developers pushing for changes that may be in their best interest of their business interest, but might not be in the best interest of the coin holder's interest. And then there's other models like the community donation model. But with any type of donation model, the big challenge is whether or not it's going to be sustainable in the long run, through thick or thin. And so the way Decred solves this is we have proof of work. So we rely on proof of work for the underlying security of the network. And then we have a proof of stake aspect as well. So that allows for the stakeholders, the people who own Decred and are locking it up and are staking it, to make decisions about what hard forks to incorporate into the protocol. And also, we have a network treasury where 10% of every block reward, so as blocks get mined, instead of all of that going to the proof of work miners, our block reward is split 60% proof of work, 30% proof of stake, 10% network treasury. So that network treasury is how we pay for the continued development of the protocol. And the proof of stake aspect allows us to basically hand control of that network treasury over to the Decred stakeholders, the people who actually own Decred, have skin in the game, and they are the ones that govern both the direction of the protocol, which teams get funded, where we spend that network treasury. Basically, they are the ultimate decision maker for all decisions in the project.
This question, how do you use crypto in your daily life, is sponsored by BMag. BMag.io. BMag, they write stories that inform, influence, and inspire the global blockchain cryptocurrency community. Luke Powell's answer to the question, how do you use crypto in your daily life, is this. I'm in a unique position since I get paid entirely in Decred, so I have no other choice but to use cryptocurrency in order to pay my bills. The way I do it is to convert a chunk of Decred every month into USD and use the USD to pay my monthly expenses. The reason I do this is twofold. The first one, the technology isn't quite there yet for spending cryptocurrency in the same way that you would use a credit card. This is where layer 2 solutions like the Lightning Network come into play. The Lightning Network is a technology that allows you to spend your cryptocurrency without having to wait for on-chain confirmations and with very low transaction fees. It's being actively developed and rolled out on various chains like Decred and Bitcoin, and I fully expect that Lightning Network adoption will be one of the major themes over the next couple years. As Lightning Network usage increases, I would also expect merchant adoption of cryptocurrencies to increase as well, since they eliminate fraudulent chargebacks and credit card processing fees for the merchants. And the second reason is, tax laws in the US make it very hard and burdensome to use cryptocurrencies for individual transactions, since every transaction has to be reported to the IRS as a capital gain or loss event. Spending cryptocurrency on everyday transactions dramatically increases the complexity of your tax return. This is a huge UX issue or user experience issue. In the future, I would like to be able to pay for all of my bills without having to first convert my Decred to USD. I'm much more optimistic that the technology side of this will be solved first. The user experience issue of having to report every transaction as capital gains and losses will likely be the bottleneck that takes years to resolve. That was from Mr. Luke Powell. And now, back to Michael and his guest. Enjoy the rest of the show.
And how did this whole construction of this governance model and all of these features, how did they all get pieced together in this format and in this kind of like organization in the very beginning?
So it started with the Bitcoin experience or that the developers had, right? You start with Bitcoin, which was proven to work. Proof of work worked, and you take that and you only change what is absolutely necessary. Like there are some small changes to Decred, such as the inflation rate. In Bitcoin, the inflation rate gets cut in half every 4 years, whereas in Decred, that curve is smoothed out. So, roughly every month it gets notched down a little bit, right? So there are small changes like that. And then like the large change is adding proof of stake onto it. And Decred really takes an iterative approach kind of in everything we do. So if you're looking at the project from the outside, we have all of these ongoing efforts, right? We have Politeia, which is our off-chain governance system, Lightning Network, the DEX, privacy. And it may look like we're basically just trying to do a little bit of everything. But if you look at the history of Decred, everything we do has been a very methodical, iterative approach where the chain launched in February 2016. The first priority was getting on-chain voting. So the ability to incorporate hard fork changes into the protocol. Once a couple of those votes were successful and that was proven to work, okay, then the focus shifted a little bit to now that we can make these hard fork changes, how do we manage this network treasury? And that's when the Politeia effort began. Politeia is our off-chain, it's our proposal system. So all the data is stored off-chain. We only keep on-chain, what is absolutely necessary. We don't want to lead to blockchain bloat. And so Politeia is a way for teams or individuals to submit proposals to the Decred community and get funding for those proposals. That is all handled off-chain, but is time-stamped onto the Decred blockchain. So once we shifted focus to, okay, how do we manage the network treasury? And then once we launched that and we continue to iterate with that, then the focus shifted to things like the Lightning Network and DEX. That's the next step. How do we scale the blockchain as time goes on, as the adoption grows? And with the DEX is super important. So if you're not familiar, when I say DEX, what I'm talking about is a decentralized exchange. And from the perspective of the project, all of the Decred contractors get paid 100% in Decred. So all of my income is 100% in Decred, which means that I have to sell Decred on a monthly basis to pay my bills. And my ability to sell Decred right now is very reliant on centralized exchanges. And historically, this has been tough. We've had, especially during like 2017, there were exchanges that wanted massive listing fees. There's exchange delistings all the time. It's a very volatile environment. Exchanges are subject to regulators. So as a project, we wanted to reduce our reliance on centralized exchanges. And so that is one of the main driving factors for creating our own decentralized exchange. We need a way for our contractors to be able to get liquidity for their Decred, no matter what is going on in the world. And so if there exists a decentralized exchange that we trust and we built that allows us to swap Decred for Bitcoin, well, then it's much easier to convert Bitcoin to whatever fiat currency you need to pay your bills or things like that. So all of the projects come out of a direct necessity from ourselves. And it's just as time goes on, as we're able to attract more and more developers and continue to build out our teams, we just have the resources to have all these ongoing projects and to keep building them out concurrently.
That's awesome. And how do you envision this is contributing to the future of cryptocurrency and the future of blockchain technology? What advancements has Decred made that you think are either going to stay, be it because of Decred, or maybe even potentially get implemented in other projects?
The governance system in general is very unique and very innovative. Okay, so the way that you have to think about it is that these cryptocurrencies are supposed to last for decades, centuries, millennia, right? And so technological change over that time, it's incredibly hard, if not impossible, to predict. So these projects are going to have to be able to adapt and evolve over time. And really, this whole aspect was kind of neglected by a lot of projects, whereas Decred kind of made this one of the core founding principles. Create a project that allows the community in the project to make decisions in a decentralized manner so that it can evolve and adapt over time. And so I think that aspect is going to become more and more apparent as time goes on, as some of these other issues of misaligned incentives crop up in other projects and slow them down in conflict, potentially fracture projects into multiple competing projects. And that you'll see that when you have the good governance, when you have the ability to adapt and evolve over time in a decentralized manner and to fund the development of all those changes, that you'll be able to really adopt any feature you want. You'll be able to keep up with the ecosystem and be able to adapt to an ever-changing environment around you. It also brings benefits like we don't have to think about a lot of these problems that are 10 or 20 years out. Will the fee market be able to sustain the security of the network? Things like that, because we can start worrying about them when they actually become an issue. Whereas in some of these other projects that are much harder to change, there's a lot of people spending a lot of time trying to figure out solutions to these problems that are so far away and that could be totally different in 5 or 10 years, just depending on the situation. So Decred's governance model and this concept of a global DAO. So if you're not familiar with the term DAO, DAO means distributed autonomous organization. So in Decred, there is no central entity that people work for, meaning everybody that works for Decred is a contractor that gets paid out of the network treasury. And that network treasury is in the process of being completely handed over to the Decred stakeholders, people who own Decred and lock it up. I mean, really, if you think about it, my boss is this global group of anonymous Decred stakeholders. And as a project, we're recruiting talent out of this global talent pool. And so you combine that with our governance model, our ability to adapt and change over time and to fund the development, I think Decred is just going to turn into pretty much an unstoppable project that a lot of other cryptocurrency projects will start copying this governance model over time.
And do you think it's the perfect crypto? Is this something that is the evolution of crypto, or do you think there's still a lot of advancements that need to be made?
I mean, I definitely wouldn't say that there is no perfect crypto. There's lots of experiments going on right now. And, who's to say what experiments will work and what experiments won't work? But I think Decred is an extremely important experiment to undertake. And I think that it has the highest potential of being able to survive long term, like when we're talking about decades and centuries, out of any other cryptocurrency, specifically because of the model that was built in from the very beginning. So yeah, I would definitely wouldn't say it's the perfect cryptocurrency, but I would say that it has a very good shot at being one of the small handful of cryptocurrencies that survives long term.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing with us a little bit about Decred and what you guys have been working on. I'm a big fan. I've been a fan for a while, so I appreciate it, man.
Cool. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the What is Crypto podcast with your boy Nye. Luke. If you're listening, thank you very much for coming on the show and your DYOR today. Do your own research. I want you to go onto our Facebook page and I want you to write down what you would put into the perfect crypto. Like, if you were here to design your own crypto, what would you have? Would it be Lightning Network? Would you have sharding? Would it be like a protocol like Ethereum? Or would it be something like Bitcoin Cash, super fast payments? What would you do? How would you do it? And what would it look like? What would the governance look like? Come onto our Facebook page, What is Crypto, and put it up there. Let's discuss it and see if we can also build the perfect crypto. We'll see you in future episodes.